There we go. I guess we started. Khalida, it is such an honor to have you join us.
Honor's own.
I know.
I'm so grateful.
No,
to be here.
seriously. I mean, not only is your story remarkable and what you've been able to accomplish and all of that, but you are, as an individual, just one of the most, I would say, present and joyous people. So to be able to have you be a part of the community truly is exciting and special for us. So,
thank you.
You know, with my thanks out of the way, I would like to actually, thank you, actually. I would like to are today, because it's such
long ago. I started, if we are talking about my kept taking us back to the village, back to the areas where we belong to, my tribal community. And it allowed me to see the injustice of how much I had. Even when I was little, we were and that always triggered something in me. I feel like the real push came when my cousin was murdered in the freedom was actually given so
realities that so many girls and women need to face across the world, and having that personal experience. You do. What gave you the strength or the tools?
I knew that it doesn't happen to everyone. It is rare to go back and not find my cousin and to be told that she never existed was beyond belief. And for a teenager, I got really angry. I hadn't heard about this, and I wasn't going to stand for it. And that anger drove everything that I did afterwards.
And so tell us a little bit about what you did.
I think like every teenager, I started feeling like the issue was much bigger than me. And so I had to convince other people who were more stronger to work on it. So I started composing poetry. In every poem, I would talk about that girl, my cousin, who was murdered, and her story and her vulnerability, her helplessness. And I would read them in events. I would convince every activist that they have the right and they have the position to do something about it, until I realized that this is something that everybody has to work on, and especially youngsters. And so I went back to my village and started a youth group. And turns out nobody talks about honor killings, so you have to kind of modify that. And I had to work around so many things to get these young people together and launch cricket teams and so many things. But then it hit me, so many failures. Like every time I was like, this is not working, like Tom talked about today. We just kept failing fast so we could stand up fast, and that helped a lot. And then the next thing we did was, we're going to change policies. So we brought 13 different people from all around the country, and we together launched, that's when I had access to computer for the first time, and internet for the first time, 10 minutes per day, like no kidding. It was amazing, like heaven, so wonderful. that is when we launched Facebook, the Wake Up campaign on Facebook, and after that it became a really big global thing. My idea was that by pressuring our governments to change policies or creating more opportunities for women to be safer, we would be able to do something. But turns out that also didn't work. Within 2 years, everybody in my tribe was against it. A lot of times tribal laws do not match with the policies. And so whatever we were trying to change wasn't actually going to change things on the ground, or it was going to take more decades to do that. So we had to change our strategy again. And that is when in 2009 I came up with the idea of promoting my culture, because it's very close to my heart. And while promoting it, I would be fighting this one custom of honor killings.
Wow. Being in that space, working with people day in and day out, and seeing the and how did you cope with that?
I felt like a terrible person, because technically it was my fault. A lot of times we challenge values, we challenge issues shamelessly, and that shamelessness had allowed me, given me the freedom to say some really harsh things about people who believed it was their values, who believed this was a way of living. And I had to change my tone, I had to change my language, and so we created the Apology Project. We would go back, apologize to the tribal communities and tell them, yes, they're right, there is a beautiful tradition, they have beautiful customs, and we are going to promote them. We're going to promote language, embroidery and music, but when we promote embroidery, we would engage women and in a center where they would be given courses on life skills and entrepreneurship, and also evaluating their traditional embroideries. So that kind of started the whole path for bringing women together in all these villages and giving them education about what Islam says about.
Started changing women's lives, and I think you've reached, at least the last numbers, they may be a little outdated. I think you have over 23 centers and reaching over 800 women across Pakistan.
24 centers. This issue is so big that there are times people like me get really antsy and get very angry, because behavioral change is not like a product that you work on, because in a product you can touch and feel the progress, and in behavioral change it gets really frustrating when you're trying to sleep, knowing that there are people out there that's going to take years to change their mindsets. And so it's just been really hard to keep going at it, and it's been 11 years now. But I'm very, very grateful that we've come up with some amazing solutions, and they're working.
Yeah. Are there any bright spots or stories, a story or two that you could share of, like, something that you hold on
villages? Everybody talks about how whenever I'm in the villages, we're not serious even for a second. Everybody's laughing, everybody's joking, because one of the biggest things is they live in a life of difficulties. I remember when I was little, I would go with my cousins to fetch water from the well, and it was 5 hours away from our village in Balochistan. These 5 hours should be miserable. Anyone who would hear it, they would be like, that's horrible. But those were the best times of our life. We would gather together, take our pots, and just walk, talk, gossip, like everything. And when I go to these women, I sit in the center of the center, in the Sughar center, and I let all the women just tell me stories, to sing. We have the best fun. Like, it's the most beautiful life I've ever imagined.
It's pretty positive. Can you tell us a little bit about Sughar, where the name comes from, and why you landed on that?
Yeah. Sughar is actually a tribal word. It's spoken in 5 different languages. Sughar women, Sughar Gorath means skilled and confident woman. I chose it because I remember my mother being called Sughar one time, and she was so happy. For 2 months she was beaming, and I knew there's something in this label. And I've Why not make it part of a description of women, skilled and confident? Because truly, when I think about myself, my father was 13 and my mother was 9 when they were married. Both were forced into the marriage. Then my father was 16 or something, but my mother was 13 when she was giving birth. And before my birth, they asked to exchange me to bring a wife for my uncle. So that means there's no difference between them and me. I got opportunities, they didn't, and that's what we are providing at Sughar. Those opportunities so they can be better than me, better than so many of us.
Amazing work. Moving forward a little bit, I'd love to hear about where you are today and what you're working on and what drives you today.
Part is Sughar is now a 501c3 status in America, so we are starting to fund organizations in Pakistan to replicate the idea, which is I'm just like so grateful for. And the second most awesome thing that's happening right now is that I've been able to, with my husband David, long story.
We'll get there.
2 years ago I did fall in love, and it did bring chaos to who is an Italian American. I found out the fear that lives in both worlds. The fear of our world, that it's a very, very different Western culture. And my scarf on my head, I see it so often. And I realized that it wasn't our parents' fault how long it took us to have them agree on this marriage. It is actually a global issue. So after we got married, we used our wedding money to launch a business called the Chai Spot. It's this place in Sedona, Arizona, which is a mini Pakistan. You come there to experience. We've actually very tactically included all 5 senses, so smell, touch, see, feel, everything. Here we play Bollywood music, and there's like all kinds of colors, and people can buy chai tea, and it's just an experience where we allow people to let go of all their fears, not just of a different culture, everything, because that is when we become truly prosperous.
Amazing. I can't wait to go. I can't imagine there are many spots in Sedona like that.
It's pretty awesome.
And so, diving in a little bit to your marriage, knowing what your path would have been had you actually ended up on the same path that your cousins had, and knowing where you are today, how do you understand that you were a lucky one? How do you balance that fate, that fact that your parents made that choice and gave you that? I mean, I imagine that it's not an easy thing to live with.
It's not. I learned about survivor's guilt, but this is beyond that.
Yeah.
This is more about every day I realize how much everything that I'm given is actually an indication of doing more. So it's not like God's like, you're just too lucky. God's like, here's a blessing so you can use it for other women in your community. And I see it that way, and gives me a lot of power. When I go back to Pakistan, which has been happening every 2 months now, it's very disorienting. A very big tool for doing more and more on the ground.
Amazing. And with David as your teammate, partner in crime, how does it like working with your husband?
Wow.
I don't think I can do that. No offense.
He's here. I think it's the most beautiful thing ever, because rights have been kept away from them. But I also believe in balance in the society. I'm a feminist who says that there has to be, like our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, shoulder to shoulder. Men and women should be at one pace. And that has always allowed both of us to use our skills. Skills are very different, and that makes it even more awesome. So when we work together, we tackle the biggest challenges instantly. We are go-getters. When we plan something, we plan for 5 seconds and we do the rest of the day, like do the rest of the year. We are just always doing something.
Wow. Well, you make it look easy and fun. So
it's pretty easy.
I think you won an award, maybe, was it Forbes 30 Under 30 or...
Yeah.
We have another winner over here. Tell us about that.
I don't know who keeps nominating me. It's pretty crazy.
Like 3 times.
So I think afterwards there won't be any chance.
40 Under 40. So tell us a little bit about the 30 Under 30, though. It's an incredible honor.
It's a huge honor, and to know that there are all these amazing people who are part of this list, and because of the 30 Under 30, we get invited to these gatherings and these summits and these conferences. Where was I this whole time? Because of my background, because of still being new to this country, let me tell you, I was 16, so I spent my childhood running around on the when I'm like, which celebrity is really awesome? Let me find out. Like, I should have favorites of music and everything. So when people ask me that, it just becomes really hard. So when it was Forbes, they sent me an email. I'm like, this is awesome. Let me see what other emails I have. And I had no idea. I had no idea how big it was. Yeah. And we recently went to the summit, and I'm like, holy moly, this is awesome.
I love it.
So serious.
Well, that's exactly the way we feel about having you here. You are a celebrity in your own right, and not because of some shallow or small thing, but because you literally are helping change girls' and women's lives all over the world.
Thank you.
And it connects so deeply to why we're all here, because literacy and girls and women go hand in hand. They are the cross-cutting issues.
Exactly.
So
And there's no other issue bigger than that, I have to say.
Yeah.
I would just close at this, that education is very, very big for me and for all of my siblings, because my father was a shepherd and his brothers. So people have a lot of kids in Pakistan majority of the times because they want them to earn income at a very young age. And he was also part of that. So his brothers would work in the field, but because he was 4 years old still, he would take the sheep. And nobody would go to school because sons earn for their families. One day he was all kinds of thoughtful. He was thinking of something, and all these sheep fed too much on the grass, and they got constipated, and no one could save the sheep. And because of such disgrace, like all those sheep were neighborhood people's sheep, so he was getting paid a little bit for that. His father was so ashamed of what he did that as a punishment he sent him to school. And that changed an entire generation. I did everything that I did because of that one mistake. My sisters are becoming these like businesswomen. They're doing the most awesome. One of my sisters is like the best fashion designers. My brother is a filmmaker. They're doing amazing things, and only because of that moment. So education changes everything. After education, we can solve all the other issues, but let's bring our focus back on the most important thing right now.